George and I will just swap back and forth on the questions, and I'll try to keep us kind of on topic. So if I feel like we're moving off topic, I will raise my hand in the air, which gives you a cue to move back to topic or to end what you're saying.
Are you then going to shake it like you just don't care?
George?
Two questions, if you don't mind, Will.
Yeah.
First question, are we going to come back to questions in the chat at some point? And if so, can we make an announcement about that at the beginning?
Absolutely. What we'll do is we can go at the end when we feel like we've wrapped up all the questions that we have to get through for this episode. What we'll do is we'll say we can return to the chat at that point.
Get them to private message me questions.
Okay. Private
or whisper me questions, because then it'll open a new tab for each person's question.
Once we're live, we can tell the people actually watching.
Well, we actually are live.
Oh, great.
And
we're
also we're not only live, but we're recording locally. So
sweet. And then what we'll do is we'll ask the questions that are in the chat at the end of the cast, and we can make that kind of special features of each segment.
Yeah. Hello,
sense?
chat.
Hello, chat.
So,
okay,
are we? We're like starting now. Like I have to put my fucking dinner down.
No,
we'll give it a couple minutes.
We can start whenever. We want to stay online for a couple minutes for Twitch to stabilize and stuff like that. Yeah. Even though we're local recording, it's always nice.
So finish your dinner, Bubba, and we'll get started when your dinner.
I was just thrown off by the 7 o'clock start time.
I know. We're going to try to at least get through 2 of these tonight. And
try and bang it out a bit.
Try to bang out 2.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess while we wait for the chat to load up, George ran a really good event this weekend. I did my first World Ender. That was exciting.
Yeah, well, it was a World Ender minor, but yeah,
it was certainly minor because we only had 10 players. Super minor.
Well,
our World Ender minor on the same weekend went to capacity, so
yeah,
you guys need to level up your meta, I guess.
Well, I think
that's one of the reasons that ours wasn't any bigger.
Yeah.
Ottawa meta legit as fuck.
Yeah, there was. I mean, it was funny because it was. There was 4 of our old War Machine players playing Magic in the corner, which was hilarious.
Yeah, that was actually kind of awesome.
The Mark II guys that all have moved to. Well, they went to Guild Ball, and then Shane Waddy and Mark Antoine started kicking their asses all the time. So now they're playing Magic.
Didn't Paul Campbell win a thing recently? Oh no, that was Mark Antoine Leclerc. Mark Antoine and Shane Waddy, or Shane Waddy. Yeah, Shane Waddy. That's what
Shane
it was.
just won it all. He's like the big dog now.
Yeah.
Good for him. So how did your World Ender go? You played Kador, Tim?
I did. I played Kador, and I won with Kador. Faction OP.
What was your other list? We know one of them because it was. I assume it was the one you used on the Arcane Assist, right?
Yeah, that was one of the videos that we put out yesterday that featured the list that I played at the event, minus Skurova plus a second Kovnik because Skurova was not legal for the event. I was just going to say before we jump into that, the second thing I was going to mention is I wanted to, at some point during this cast, make sure we make a point of thanking Matt McWaters, who helped work on a bunch of the outside perspective type stuff, like what a perspective player would want, that Bubba and I don't have as much insight into because we already have applied for this many times and know exactly why one would want to go to the WTC.
Cool.
But my off list was Butcher 3 in Jaws the Wolf, which is a list that I worked on in May and June of this year, and have been handing out to any Kador player who felt like they didn't have a good answer to Ghost Fleet, because I think it's absolutely fantastic and it just shit stomps Ghost Fleet and crushes most of Crix incidentally. And I played Crix round 1 and crushed a Ghost Fleet player with Jaws the Wolf Butcher 3.
Oh, I think I've got that list.
It's a super good list, and it was a really easy one for me to jump into because it's actually a list that I built.
That's the Ruin Triple Marauder Juggernaut with Behemoth on a Greylord, double Kiazi with Yuri.
Mm-hmm. And you've got Kiazi, who are basically guns that RFP things, and then you've got Yuri, who can Thresher RFP a bunch of Revenant models. And you've got Behemoth's magical guns, Ruin's magical melee weapon, and Butcher's magical melee weapon, so you've got many, many vectors to threaten the Wraith engine. You can personally threaten Denegro with Butcher's ranges, and you've got enough late-game high armor that she runs out of steam after her feat turn.
Yeah, I might try that. I have to pick up Butcher 3, but I'm about to try Malikov 2 version of Jaws to see. I was looking at the Kazi Eliminators as knockdown guns, basically.
That's really good. Matt Goldfarb played something similar at TGX this year, and we played a couple of games. He was playing a version that didn't have the Marshaled Behemoth in Jaws the Wolf, and we played like during the it wasn't Champions, it was the LCQ event on Friday of TGX, and we played in one of the last rounds of that, and I was like, dude, you should switch to the Marshaled Behemoth version of the list, and we had a really, really good game. And then the next day we played again, like round 1, and he had the Marshaled Behemoth version of the list this time, and it was a much, much harder game. So there's something there. I think that's actually the best list in the game for Malikov. That's not saying a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's still the problem is you're still running Malikov, but
Jet.
Yeah, it's weird. Like him having Sucker is really cool. So I'm like, oh man, that's a really amazing anti-gun tool. You should run him in like a cheap infantry list so that he could be like, unassailable by guns. Oh, never mind. The cheap infantry list in Khador already gives that benefit to every caster.
Yup.
Well, his special thing ain't that special anymore.
Now, I'm interested that you took double Jaws to a tournament. I would feel...
I did not.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. What was the...
It's Legion of Steel and Jaws.
Oh, of course. Legion. The other one's a Legion of Steel. Sorry, all the...
You said you knew the other list, so I didn't go into it.
No, it's the double Ulans, Old Witch 2 with one unit of regular pikemen instead of the black black dragons.
Black dragons.
Well, I guess it was a points problem, right?
Why they're regular rather than black dragons?
Yeah.
No, it's access to base relentless charge and the mini feat. They serve mostly as a tar pit in the list because most of your heavy armor cracking is done by Ulans. So black dragons are less urgent and your tar pit's more important because that list is all about closing position, locking down multiple pieces of term with Witch, and then like aggressively face stomping a specific element of their list, and then keeping your Ulans really safe every turn.
So when you're playing a list like that, the idea I guess target priority is really the thing, right? You have to pick your target and then destroy it with the Ulans, get them out of the way, next target.
This week on Khador Cast with...
Pro tip, that's also how all of War Machine should be played.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question because that's how it should be played, not how it is played.
I mean, like, to say that it's a list that rewards good fundamentals of play is a little bit like saying, I don't know, get good.
Yeah.
Which is not like a particularly useful piece of advice, but it is factually accurate.
I'm just going to interrupt you guys for 1 second and acknowledge anybody who's joined us in the chat. We are doing a special cast tonight. It is going to be the Road to the WTC Part 1 and hopefully Part 2, depending on how the timing works out. Knowing us, we'll probably only get through Part 1 this week, but we're going to try to keep these as short and sweet as we can while still divulging all the information. Divesting might be the better word. Giving as much info as humanly...
divest ourselves of this info.
Yeah, exactly. Try to get as much info out there as possible. For those people that are joining us in the chat, what we're going to do is we're going to take your questions at the end of the cast. And I know that's not really normal. That's unfortunately why Jason's not here tonight, is because he was like, you bastards don't need me. I'm just going to drink at home alone.
As is normal.
As is normal. So what you're going to do is if you have questions, I want you to private message PG Semi-Auto Magic in the chat. That's the best way to do it. That way he, at the end of the cast, will have a list of all the questions. We'll try to skim through what you did say in the general chat as well. But we're not going to be looking at the general chat during the cast to try to keep things on topic.
I just asked him a question. It's all good.
Yeah. So we're going to give it about another 5 minutes, and then we'll get started. Because we're really trying to get this locally recorded, there'll be a bit of a difference. This is not your standard Death Clock cast.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess did you get all your Khador questions out of the way?
Never.
You've got it figured out now.
No, well, the real thing that I have a big problem with is actually that target prioritization.
Yeah. I mean,
like that is. Well, I know that's kind of like how you get better at War Machine is get better at target prioritization.
Well,
but it's one of those things I really don't think I've cracked.
Well, part of the thing you and I've talked about quite a bit after our games is that you've often left a key piece on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I had a real problem at the World Ender this weekend where I could not get past a jam and lost to a Death Ripper, an Arc Node, which really sucked because I pretty much
You
had
couldn't
cleared,
get back there to it.
I had cleared everything else. I just had nothing to get to it at all, and that was that was against sorry,
Alid?
Sorry about that, Alid. And he did an amazing job of basically just pinning me to the wall. Even though I did cleared everything, it was
Against Aled, I left my caster in the middle of the board on 0 camp, and he didn't kill me.
I see. That was the worst part. Is that I was camping 5. I was in a trench. Thexus was as far back and in the middle as he could be without losing points. There was nowhere else for me to fucking go. and he had like I don't want to even know what the percentage is, but he had to TK me out. He had to cast Icy Winds or whatever it was to lower my defense another notch and lower my armor another notch, and then he had enough focus because he was on that caster that collects all the souls and then turns them into focus.
Not Vociferon, Venethrax?
Scabbers.
He was on, and then he was able to hit
I
me.
was desperately trying to figure out what he was playing because it was like TK and Icy Winds.
Oh,
well, that's not a spell.
Yeah, it's not
What-
Icy
what
Winds.
is the spell?
It's
It's
Icy
Icy Grip and-
Icy
yeah.
Grip. And then he was able to cast it 6 times, and it came down to the very last roll, and he rolled exactly what he needed to kill me. And I had pretty much tabled him at that point. It was like one of those like, are you fuck? And it was round 1, and I was like, that's that table flip. I'm on it now. And then I calmed down, and then I had 2 amazing games after that. So, but
Yeah, round 1 loss is tough. It's really hard to swallow those sometimes.
well, I've learned that my Thexus list really needs those 2 machine wraiths. The 2 machine wraiths mean that I wouldn't have had to worry as much about. I could have figured out a way to get a machine wraith over there unless he had cleared the machine wraith, which I doubt he could have. But anyway, it was a good game. Super good game. Learned lessons.
You could have stuck the 2 machine wraiths base to base with each other in front of you so that he couldn't TK you out of the trench.
Anything, there was a few, whatever options I could have had, there was no way to get anything to
Well, you
his
didn't
arc
have the
node.
machine race in that.
I didn't have I just had nothing to get to his arc node, and the arc node was left out in the wind, and I had no way to completely block him out. There was just no angle to block him out. Anyway, long story short, I learned a lesson. Kill the goddamn arc node first. You guys ready? We all ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
No, we don't. Are we going to do anything with an opening? Like, you're going to cook one later.
I'm going to cook one later. So
Okay.
The way that we'll just do the opening is there'll be an opening here. We'll pause for a second. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's special broadcast, part 1 of Road to the WTC. What we're going to be talking about tonight is we've gathered a couple of people who have been to the WTC several times, who've been involved in the WTC committee, and are currently involved in the selection process of upcoming teams. We've invited Tim Banky and Bubba Dalton to join us. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going, folks?
Before we get started, I would like to introduce the guy that's going to be running the boards tonight, and asking the other questions while I moderate. The one and only former PG Semi-Auto Magic, George Schweizer.
Yeah, someday you're going to have to stop calling me PG.
I can't figure that. Sorry, dude. It's just ingrained in my memory. If you don't know who I am, my name's Will Richardson, also known as the Myth Gorax, and I moderate these things. That's kind of what I do. So, Tim, you sort of got this all together with the help of Matt McWaters. Matt.
You didn't even do it.
I didn't even try. So Matt and you put together a series of questions, and we've broken them into 3 parts. Can you kind of tell us, in your own words, what the point of this cast is?
So this is a project that arose because a lot of people ask us the same question, which is, you guys have been to the WTC. How do you become a WTC caliber player? What goes into that process? How do you get picked for a team? What should I do to, have a shot at being picked for a team? How should I apply, or what should I do if I'm thinking I might want to apply at some point in the future? Those kind of questions. So this is supposed to sort of serve as a bit of a general answer to that. And background-wise, also, like, why should we care? What's cool about this event? What's the experience like, and why is it cool? I should clarify something that you said a little bit earlier. Neither Bubba nor I are involved in picking people this year, so you can't just cozy up to us and tell us that you're so great and that we should pick you. There is a committee for Canada that does pick people, and it has been selected, and I believe that they're talking about having a website online with the application by this Friday. So Bubba and I are both going to be applying, just like everyone else this year, but we have successfully been selected for teams in previous years.
My apologies, and thank you for the clarification. I guess the first thing is, let's talk a bit about what the WTC is and why we would want to attend it. Bob, I'm going to direct this question at you first. What is the WTC?
So the WTC is the World Team Championship. It features 64 different teams from various countries. Teams are made up of 5 players. You play 6 rounds over 2 days, 3 rounds each day, so a nice casual schedule. And all the events are generally held in Europe, based on most of the teams are from Europe. It's held every September. This coming year, it's in Poland. Last year was in Belgium. This been 3 times before, and what it is it's essentially the pinnacle of War Machine. If you want to be the best and play with the best, you go to the WTC, because you're going to see the greatest players from every corner of the world at one event. So there's 320 total players, and it's a War Machine tournament on a scale that most people can't even fathom.
Well, you've wandered a little bit into why to attend, but I'll throw this to Tim. What makes attending this particular event so amazing?
One of the things is you're surrounded by people who you don't necessarily have a similar culture with, like people who don't necessarily share a first spoken language, although communication in English is quite easy and has historically been quite easy. People who are from all walks of life and from very, very different upbringings and very different experiences in terms of what their own countries are like, but who all share an incredible passion at the highest level for War Machine. So you'll be talking to people who, like, they live totally different lives from you, and they eat totally different foods, and they live on different schedules, and their countries have different kinds of problems, but you know exactly what the issues in the current metagame are. Like, you both know exactly how many attacks it takes to kill a Marauder with a charging Carnivian. The answer might surprise you. But like, you don't know what their daily experience is like. So there's these people who you want to be friends with and connect with and meet with and chat with. There's this real environment of camaraderie, which has always been this really amazing experience. You walk into this room and you see somebody and you don't know them, you don't know who they are or anything really about them, but you have fast reasons to become friends, and that's pretty cool. And you share meals together and you share drinks together, and that environment is really neat. And you get to talk about the game at a level that it's rare to be able to talk about the game at.
It sounds like taking the con experience where you're with a whole bunch of like-minded people, but blowing it up to a global scale.
Sure, absolutely.
That sounds fantastic. Why wouldn't you want to go? Now, the problem with going to the WTC is it's not necessarily something everybody can do. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. Now, because we're talking to Canadian players, and we are obviously Canadian, we're going to be focusing on the way that the Canadian team works, but I'm guessing that you guys can kind of extrapolate on a global scale as to what most of the teams do, or maybe the best practices in order to get to the WTC. Are we correct in that assumption?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
And we can touch briefly on like the American selection process or how some other countries do it or have done it in the past. But basically, at its very, very core, every country is going to try to pick their best representatives from among the pool of players who have the aptitude, willingness, and can afford to make the commitment of time and travel money.
And Canada is unique in that regards with America and Australia and China in terms of it's a little more effort to go, and by a little more I mean a lot more.
For sure.
All right, so let's talk about you touched on it briefly that there was a thing called the WTC committee. What is the WTC committee? Bubba, I'll angle that at you first.
All right, so the WTC committee this year consists of a number of people that I cannot remember. I think it's 6 or 7, and they are responsible for the logistical setup of Team Canada, and they're responsible for picking the teams. Logistical setup, I mean registering us for WTC, making sure the WTC gets the money for the down payment, for the hotel costs, the food costs, because that all has to be paid months up front. And so they're responsible for doing that, and then picking the players. And that's the most arduous task and the toughest task, but it's the first task that has to get done. And they're the ones that decide how it's going to be picked, whether it's an application via paper, interviews, a combination thereof, and how they're going to divvy up the teams, East, West, A, B, that kind of thing.
So I'm going to send this to Tim. Tim, just to extrapolate that a little bit, the WTC committee, does it change every year, and does the way that they do things change every year?
I think they want to be flexible and they want to be adaptable. I actually served on the first WTC selection committee for Canada. I chaired that one and sent the first team. That was before Bubba was on a team and before I was ever considered a half-decent player. And mostly it was, at that stage, it was organizers, people who knew the players from various regions of Canada. And we had people from the West and from Alberta, from Ontario, and from Quebec. And we tried to, pick the best team we could. And now, obviously, that's evolved significantly since then in the, 4 years that have passed since each year we've kept the core of the members of the committee being volunteers, usually from a fair stretch across the country. Last year's selection committee was mostly mostly organizers and players from Western Canada. This year there's a bit more of a mix, but with maybe a bit more of a lean toward organizers who are from Ontario. But our chair this year is the one and only Scott Tellerico. And he's put a lot of effort, I think, into making sure that this is a year where we pick good players and have a very well-organized bout. So I trust he knows what he's doing. And he's the guy who's gonna make all of this happen for us.
So Scott is right now busily getting all of his ducks in a row. How do you, as a player, apply for the Canadian WTC this year?
So Scott has wisely set up a website so that you can apply. You can submit your application, fill it out online. It used to be they'd post like a PDF document on Facebook or something, and you'd open it and you'd fill it in, and then you'd email them the answers. But they've streamlined that process quite wisely. And that's step one: is you fill out that application, you send it in. There was talk of there not being a fee this year. It's usually about $30 to apply, so not that much. And then once you do that, it's wait and see and on to step two, which is interviews and that kind of thing.
What type of information are they normally looking for when you're filling out one of these forms? What should I have available and ready?
So that's a great question, because there's been a push from both the players and the committee this year to reevaluate the application, which is all around agreed upon that needs to be done.
For sure.
Because it used to be about 30 questions that required very long and wordy answers that weren't always the best. So what they're looking for is your basic information: who you are, where you're from, what factions you play, what your experience is in War Machine, how long you've been playing, that kind of thing. And then they want more detailed things. What have you done in the last year? What cons have you attended? What kind of lists have you been playing? What kind of accomplishments do you have? What's your game knowledge like? Are you able to afford to go to WC? And that's a straightforward question, because
Sure.
being from Canada, like, we have to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's not cheap. And generally when we go, we make it a vacation, so then there's more blah, blah, blah. But they just want to know you, and they want to know you as a person a bit, and you as a player a lot. Because a lot of people who apply, they might not be known East versus West. Like, I don't know a lot of guys out West, or what they do, or what their accomplishments are. And that's fine, because we live 4,000 kilometers apart.
Do you have anything?
I was also...
Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, Willie. If you don't mind, I was just going to say the other thing that like as a point of comparison, the American application, they look only at tournament performance in the last 2 years, and they look only at like Iron Gauntlet qualifier events, like Champions events, and Masters events. So like that's really, really restrictive. That's basically only looking at conventions. Now, I don't think Scott and his team are going to be necessarily quite as restrictive as that, but definitely the gold standard for player performance is that really, really high caliber of play. We're in North America. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of conventions in driving or inexpensive flying distance. There's plenty of opportunity for people to build a resume for this kind of thing. There's no reason why people selected for this kind of event shouldn't have a resume that includes those kind of tournament finishes.
I guess the question I wanted to pose before we move back into sort of our listed questions was, if I'm watching this or listening to this for the first time, I've been playing for a couple of years. Is it worth me, local dude, to even bother applying, or is it like you got to have those big conventions under your belt? Is it not even worth it for me to apply at that point?
I think it depends a little bit on your expectations. If you're a local player who does well, and you want to apply with no real expectations, but with the hope that you'll get the opportunity for an interview, to talk to somebody, to go over what kind of things you should add to your resume before being seriously considered in the future, to kind of help build some personal goals and to set sort of, this is my standard for where I want to be in a couple of years, and see kind of how you stack up against some of the other applicants, and then compare yourself and your own personal achievements to the people who get in and kind of say like, okay, now I know where I need to be. I think that's a really excellent reason to apply. If you beat your friends in your 4-person basement meta all the time and you apply and you're expecting team 1 or team 2, maybe team 3 if it's a really busy year, you might be preparing yourself for disappointment.
Perfect.
So one more thing.
You also,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry. You also, people who apply without, just to add on what Tim said, without that con level, if they are serious about wanting to play at WTC, it's a great way to get that positive feedback. And if they have the passion to actually go, like real passion and real desire, then they can keep that up for the next year and take everything they've heard from the council and use that. And those are the people who are going to excel if they take that feedback and have that drive. They're going to be the ones to succeed in the future.
So I guess that actually leads us to the next question, which is, how are the applicants chosen? How does the committee select people? I mean, we've kind of tiptoed around a couple of ways, but Tim, we'll start with you. How is that selection process done?
Sure. I can talk about a couple of experiences I've had being part of a selection process. This most recent year, I was a captain of one of the teams, and I had to bring my recommendations for a team I'd like to have to the council and be able to justify and defend those choices. So for me, I interviewed about 25 people for 4 spots. So obviously the competition was pretty tight. And of those people that I interviewed, I used a rubric. I asked them questions like, how many games do you play a week? What factions do you play? I looked at if they were playing factions that I felt like were better in Mark III than they were in Mark II, and they had a lot of valuable experience there. I looked at if I felt like their faction choices helped compositionally with the factions that I'm comfortable with and the factions that I expected to see from other people. And I also looked at the big things like tournament finishes. And, have they qualified for the War Machine Weekend Invitational? Have they won a Masters event? Have they won a local steamroller? Like that's a bar that you set yourself up to. Have they won a larger event? Have they attended larger events? And what kind of experience do they have with metas outside their own? It's really easy to say, like, I've got a really good read on the meta and I totally know how to beat everybody at War Machine and I really understand what I'm doing in Hamilton. But if I can say, like, I know that, and I know how the Ottawa meta is different, and I know how the Calgary meta is different, and I know how the Seattle meta is different from the East Coast meta, and all of those things considered, I can draw some of these conclusions about the lists that are winning tournaments in Sweden and at ClogCon and at these various events. Like, that's more useful to me. So
because
I looked
they play weird shit in Europe.
They do. They play weird shit in Europe, and like from their perspective, we play weird shit in North America too. Like there just are differences that are really relevant.
No, we just play
And-
6-month-old Europeans.
Yeah, we're about a year behind the European meta. I think that's
I just want to interject for Tim real quick.
Yeah.
If you guys noticed when he talked about his rubric, and I have seen Tim's rubric, and it's really well constructed, and he totals up points based on all the things. How many things were there other than going to a con, winning a con? There's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not like the American system where it's like, okay, I won the Sioux, so I'm in, and I didn't win the Sioux, so I'm out. Like,
yeah, I mean, I looked at and when I was the chair of the committee the very first year, when we didn't have a great Canadian War Machine presence all over the world, and we didn't have tons of people who were winning events in the States, we were looking for people with the right attitude. Like, you know, are you going to represent our country well? Like when we go there, what are people going to be saying about the Canadians after the WTC? How do we set a standard for those things? And, you know, we were looking for people who were going to represent us positively and who would have an attitude about winning that wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a win at all costs attitude. Now, I'm looking for players who can win, and I'm looking for players who are going to do extremely well on the team, but I'm also looking for players who at the end of a game are going to have opponents say, like, well done, you beat me fairly and squarely, and I appreciate how the game went. There's always sometimes people's feathers get a little ruffled about a specific circumstance, but generally speaking, I want us to be acquitting ourselves well and to be seen as folks who are going to be sporting about the game. And I've pushed that attitude really, really hard over the years, and I know you guys have seen me do that a little bit, but that was something that was really important to me and the kind of players that we take to this event. I don't just want somebody who's going to win. I want somebody who's going to win and not have a story about themselves. You know, get upset and upend a table or something like that.
So along with choosing players, the committee also has to choose the captains. Now, how are the captains chosen, and how much do their input go into what other players maybe get selected?
It's varied from year to year. I think that's fair to say. And
I think it's going to change again this year.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the committee trying different things and using different methods for selecting captains is really smart. I got selected as a captain last year, and I did not apply as a captain. It was one of the questions that was offered, and I said I don't necessarily want to do that. And there came a situation where I got some pressure from the other two captains who'd been selected, and they said they felt like I was the best person remaining as a potential applicant to be a captain. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Like, I'll make it happen. And it's a lot of work. Like, being a captain is something that nobody should go into lightly. It's a ton of effort, and to do it well, you have to communicate so much and so effectively with your team, and you have to know everything. Like, I felt like I personally tested the lists of every single member on my team more than I normally would test my own lists in a year.
Is there...
And that's why I'm not a captain.
Is there any talk of going to the format that a lot of the online games use, where the team captain or team coach isn't necessarily a player? They're an extra member on the team who runs numbers, who talks to the actual players about stuff. Not necessarily someone who doesn't play War Machine, just someone who doesn't have to play War Machine that day.
I don't know if we're at that point yet. I don't know if we're at the point where there are people committed enough, dedicated enough to put in that amount of effort for the reward of watching your peers succeed, and that's it. Because
there's also,
you're not.
And I was just going to say, there's real specific to the format too. Like, you're not allowed to have outside players give advice during the pairing process. So like, it has to be one of the 5 members of the team who actually does the pairings. So it's very, very natural for the captain to be the member of the team because of the restrictions of the way the WTC operates.
But you can have a coach at WTC.
You just can't have them advise the pairings while pairings are happening.
Yeah.
So what are the responsibilities that a captain has?
Everything.
And nothing.
Tim's better to speak than me. I've never been a captain. I was asked to be captain last year, and I said, hell no. Because I know it's a shit ton of work.
It is. I had some stress issues and like, developed a stomach ulcer and had some teeth grinding things. Like, I had to get into some hardcore meditation. But basically, the entire pressure of four people who you care about and have worked incredibly hard to get there and to be there is on your shoulders. If something goes wrong, it's your fault. If something goes right, your team did well. Like, that's the way that the attitude is and how it should be approached. And not only do you have to win your lane, but you have to put everyone into good matchups. You have to find them favorable ones, or if you're putting someone under the bus, they have to have a positive understanding of that. You can't protect yourself. That obviously looks really bad on you, and you can't protect your buddies. It can't just be an event that's about you and friends going, because you're representing your country, and you have to do well for the sake of your country. At the very, very core, you're responsible with the advice of your team for the pairing process at the table. The five people are standing across the table from you, and you have to submit a list and then pick which of the two matchups you're being played, and then continue that process and pick the tables that they're played at. And then beyond that, you have to make sure everyone has water, everyone eats properly, everyone, is in a position to get a good night's sleep should they choose to. Like, I mean, you got to make sure your team's taken care of, and that's a lot of work.
So to move away from the captains, because I think we've kind of covered that base, and obviously most of your applicants, a large percentage, are not going to be captains. Let's talk about the teams and a little bit, and talk about Team Canada and why we have three teams. What are the three teams for Team Canada? Why do we have three teams? And is there a difference in the quality of those teams? Do you need to be? Is there like a Team 1, Team 2, and then the scrub tier, or are all teams considered equal? Tell us a bit about that. We'll start with Bubba.
So Canada's three teams last year were named Goose, Moose, and Beaver. That is subject to change if we so desire. It could be whiskey, poutine, and hockey. I don't know. But it's the names change. In terms of who's on them and all that, that has changed in the past. There's been years where it's one team is East, one team is West. Now we have a third team. This year, it's currently unknown, but Canada is in a very, very strong position to get a third team again. There is a criteria set out by the WTC for how that happens. Part of it is based on how you finish at WTC, not by your top placing team, but by your second placing team. If you've ever hosted the WTC before, you get an extra point for doing all that fucking work. And then a lot of the reasons you get a third team are based on your country's demographics. What's your population? What's your area? How many time zones do you have? Weird stuff like that. So Canada does really well in those metrics. And we believe that we are third on the list this year for who gets a second team. Poland gets the first slot because they're the host, rightfully so. And then we believe second is Germany, because they have really strong metrics as well. And then we're pretty sure third.
For reference, there were 8 third teams selected this year. Is that correct, Bubba?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I don't like to say guaranteed, but it is the highest likelihood that Canada will get a third team of any year that there has been a likelihood we would get a third team.
And the only reasons we would not are if a lot of new countries sent teams, like if all of a sudden there was a Brazilian team and an India team or a South Africa team or something like that.
Which for the record would be amazing. Like,
that'd be great.
Give up. Yeah. I think we could all agree that we'd give up our third spot just to get some cool new countries playing the game and spread it a little bit farther.
Absolutely. Especially like obscure ones a bit. And then in terms of like the 1, 2, 3 thing, because I didn't really touch on that. It usually shakes out like that. Team 1 is on paper, which means fucking nothing, the best team. Team 2 is a step below, although this year was Team 1 was East, Team 2 was West. And then Team 3 was a lot of newer players, which is good because you want new blood year after year so that in a couple years you have so many potential candidates that it doesn't matter team 1, 2, or 3, all 3 are going to be amazing. And this year it worked out that all 3 teams performed incredibly well, so it didn't really matter.
Becky, is there anything you want to sort of add to that at all?
This is going to change year to year, and we're going to do different things, and we're going to see what Scott's team puts together this year for their criterion in terms of selection process. But it's going to come down to if they choose a captain and a team, and then choose a captain and a team, as we have done historically, there's going to be a little bit of bias toward the 1, 2, 3 order. But it's how hard those guys work. Like, Team 3 can upset Team 1 just as easily as anything else. The depth of War Machine play in Canada is incredible.
So when I'm heading to a local steamroller, I know that I'm going to face a wide skill gap between that guy who this is his second tournament and he's not quite sure where his tape measure went, and then I sometimes have to play Marc-Andre round 1. What type of skill levels are you seeing at the WTC? Is it kind of equal across the board, or are there some teams that you kind of look at the pairings and you're like, oh, that's going to be really bad?
There aren't a lot of bad players there. Let me put that out there first. I think there are no bad players, but there are different categories of expected level of play. My team last year did not have an easy round. Round 1, we played against Germany Lorelei, which is a rough draw because they won the whole event, and they're fucking fantastic. And we almost upset that round. Like, we had 2 games that we ended up losing, one of which Sasha won with 2 seconds left on his clock, and the other one, Corey must have boosted 7 that wins the game. And so, I mean, all the what ifs are endless, obviously, but my point is that between my team, who finished top half, but top half, and the team that wins the whole WTC, it can come down to something as narrow as 2 die rolls, and that's the caliber of play you expect from the players there. And the absolute worst team there is maybe going to be from a country that doesn't have the kind of depth of incredible War Machine play that we're fortunate to have here in Canada, but everybody belongs there. I mean, everybody's earned their spot from their respective countries, or something went wrong, and they're going to go back to their respective countries and look at that really hard. No one wants to bring embarrassment to their people, right?
Bubba, anything to say to extrapolate on that?
The skill level is incredibly high. Is there variations? Yes. But if you were to compare it to a local steamroller, take that, but then shift it up by a factor of 10. So the people at the very top, like Germany, Australia, they are just unnaturally good, and they don't make a lot of mistakes. The people at the quote bottom aren't quite as good as, say, a Germany or an Australia, but they are still quality players who, at any point in any game, can beat you.
Awesome. They remembered their tape measures.
Perfect. So to end off this part of the 3-part series, I want to leave sort of the how to get selected part behind, and I want to talk a little bit about what to expect going to the WTC. So what else happens in and around that event, sort of the money spent, the things you can do. So the first question that we have for you guys is, how much do you need to sock away to afford to be a WTC player?
That depends on what you want to do. There are
$4,000.
No, there are people who go from North America for that reason. They show up Thursday, late Thursday. They stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leave Monday morning. That's fine if you want to do that. You can do it that way for maybe $1,500, right? Maybe a little less even if you're really strict on yourself. But you're flying all the way to Europe. You've put all this time and effort in. You're going with your friends. So all of us like to have a bit of a vacation while we're there. Whether we do it together, apart, we bring our significant others, whatever. So if you want to do that, you're looking at $3,000 to $4,000 because you're going on vacation for a week as well, in addition to your 3 or 4 days at WTC.
Okay, so to put this to Banky, what other, like, if we're gonna go outside of the War Machine, the actual event itself, what other things are there to do?
I was gonna say my number $4,000. It's about the fact that don't expect if you're going to WTC that you don't also have to go to at least 3 or 4 other War Machine conventions that year. You better be practicing, and you better be practicing with the best players in the world at the highest level. So if you can do that on a budget, you can drive to some events, or you can carpool with people, or you can make it cheap, and you can go to 4 events for $500 a piece. You've spent $2,000 there. If you do the WTC on the best possible budget, you can get your flight for about $900. You can squirrel away euros, and you can do the rest of the trip for not very much money at all. If you can get that in under $4,000, I think that's what you should have in a bank account ready to do that or able to be put away. While you're there, I mean, what I like to do is drink and hang out with Europeans, especially the kind that play War Machine. We were there in Belgium several days early. We went to Delirium. We drank with the Australians. We drank with the Swedes. We drank with some of the Americans. Like, we had a great time.
We ate a lot of waffles.
We ate a fuck ton of waffles. Like, you're in Belgium, you eat waffles.
We
drink good Belgian beer.
You do a lot of walking. Like, we went to this square, that square, Tim. Oh my God.
We spent a lot of time in the square.
Every day.
You have the regional specialties. We had mussels and fries. We went to the Belgian Comic Museum, saw, the exhibit on Asterix and Obelix, which was really cool for me. You want to take in the experience. You want to have a good trip. You want to make it worth your while. And, like, practically speaking, just in terms of, like, being a good War Machine player and doing good by your country, you want to land a couple of days early so you can absorb the jet lag experience and get some of your fun European drinking out of the way, so that come Friday, you can be a little bit more business time. You can have 2 less beers than you were having the night before, still have a good time, still hang out with people and have fun, but you can go to sleep, in my case, 7 hours earlier than you went the night before at 1 a.m.
And then after WTC, we made a little trip to Germany to Oktoberfest. It was okay.
Yeah, they have this thing in Munich. It's I don't know. It's about something else.
It's a thing.
But
I can't remember.
So, I mean, I guess, as a guy who's spent most of his life traveling, one of the best things to do in this world, one of the greatest things to do, and the things that will open your mind the most, is to actually experience the cultures that you're in. One of the best things about Europe is you can generally go from anywhere in Europe to somewhere else in Europe for relatively cheap, relatively quickly, whether it's by trains, cars, planes, you name it. There's ways to do that. If you're going to make your way all the way to Poland, you may as well go see a couple other places while you're there, or at least see Poland. I'm going to pass the next question.
So, like, for example, if I make WTC this year and go to Poland, my intention is to go to Prague in the Czech Republic first, experience that, and then go to Poland and go to WTC.
When we went to Poland 4 years ago, I went as a judge, and after Poland, I met my partner in Madrid. She flew direct to Madrid, and I flew for $100 from Poland to Madrid, and we rented an apartment and stayed in Madrid for a week, and that was great.
So is the WTC something that you can bring along your significant other for? For us here, it's not the quick thing that it might be for some of the Europeans. Where you're going to go for the weekend and come back. We're tending to go for longer. So is it something you can, bring the family type of thing?
Absolutely. Not this year, but last year, Corey brought his family. This year, Jeremy brought his partner. Josh brought his sister. And there's a lot of things.
I've brought in my wife before as well.
Sorry, I'd forgotten about that, Bubba. But there's a lot of activities that the committee puts together, like, to make sure that there's something for them to do if they want to, like, go out and experience the sites, or, like, go on a day trip, or kind of have some experience while you're spending the whole day playing games. But bring your partner to Europe when you're planning a trip to Europe anyway seems like a really good system.
Okay,
lots of people do. Yeah,
we're gonna wrap this up with the sort of the question that's going to be the last question that everybody asks after all of it's done is, first off, do I need to be fully painted? Second, how do I bring all my minis? And do I get them there? Can I rent minis? What's the deal? How do I get my minis there? And do I need to be fully painted? I'll start with Bubba.
So technically, you don't have to be fully painted, but your team will beat your ass if you're not. There are severe penalties if you're not fully painted. So yes, be fully painted. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you're a Canadian that's not fully painted, I will personally kick the shit out of you. And then Tim will kick the shit out of you.
Yep. And I'm normally a pacifist, so that's
that's a pretty big deal. Tim, transporting the minis, is there some advice? How do you do it? Do you have some advice on what to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that your minis fit in a carry-on sized transport. Battle foams, most of their sizes that are designed for privateer fit in carry-on. If you have more than fits in a battle foam container, make sure that you don't let Dave Beauchamp touch your conquest. And otherwise, just make sure things are in like your second personal item, or John Ferris built a small structure out of duct tape to hold 2 AFGs. But don't check your bags. Don't let them check your bags. If they say, hey, we don't think we're going to have enough room on the plane for these, make a fuss. Don't let them check your bags. They will destroy your models. They will just ruin everything. Don't tell them your models are hollow. Don't tell them that Thagrosh's spear can be used as a weapon. Yeah, like there's a whole bunch of do's and don'ts of crossing through airport
Don't
security.
say the word bomb on a plane.
You can do that if you want.
General life rule right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody in this conversation said that on the way to WTC. It wasn't me.
Maybe once. We got a great exit row though. Almost got sent out of it. But yeah, one of the things that I do is before I put everything into the battle foam containers, I wrap each of my models in like a tissue, like just a piece of Kleenex. Just wrap each of them so that when you get them there, you can unwrap them and usually nothing's broken. If it is,
the extra bits of foam from blisters and stuff.
Yep, that's perfect.
Tuck them in beside, do that kind of stuff. Really make sure there's no wiggle or anything because it's a long trip.
Yeah, and there's turbulence and things get jostled around, and you're going to end up carrying those battle foam bags onto a train, off of a train, onto a train, off of a train, jumbled up or down while you walk down cobblestones for 20 minutes because the venue's 25 minutes away from the train station. Like, you're going to be putting these things into lockers filled with urine, and they're going to go through Europe, so you better make sure that they're prepared for appropriate transportation. And that's totally doable. Like, models can be transported no problem, but my rules are always pack light, pack tight, and make sure you've got a backup plan.
And bring glue.
To that end, Keith did this year get called up as an alternate, not have his army with him because he was already in Europe, and he did just post a message saying, hey, can anybody lend me 2 fully painted Crix lists, and got them. So you could rent them.
If I make WC this year, I'm not bringing any models with me.
Oh, good. And not gonna pick a faction either. You're just gonna wait to see who shows up with some shit.
No. Somebody offered to bring me models to Oakland.
Oh, okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna wrap up this episode. For those of you listening live, we're gonna continue right on to the second. But that's it for this episode of Road to the WTC. Before we leave it all behind, do we have any questions from the audience, George? Nothing came in. That's okay. We'll make up a fancy.
Everyone hates us.
That's right. I'll make up some sort of fancy extra that sounds intelligent because I'm going to actually write it down, and I'll get Banky to proofread it and then actually do things.
And that'll go here where you're just babbling.
Yeah, exactly. That'll go when this part goes. So I think we're good. That's perfect. That brings us to 8 o'clock. We're going to go right into episode 2, and that'll take us to 9, and that most likely will take us to 9. You guys are good to go for the second one?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody need to take a break before we run?
Get another beer.
Anything like that? Nope.
I'm okay.
Okay, great. So in the
part 1, it was about as dry as I thought it would be.
Well, it's the way she goes.
Part 2, though, excited for part 2 and
part
3.
2's where the fun is. Okay. Well, then, anybody who's listening live, please remember that we are taking your questions. Just send them to George or put them in the general chat. If you didn't hear this, George will skim through the general chat. I don't know. Is there any chat going on? I can't even see the chat.
Not really.
All right. Perfect. Other than
that was the driest shit ever. It's really great and informative if you are looking for that. But the people who come to our show are not looking for actual information.
Oh, that's true.
Or else they wouldn't come to our show.
Oh, mercy. Any changes you guys want to make on the format for the second one, or are we good with what we just did?
It works for me, but if Bubba has any suggestions, I'm open-minded.
Perfect.
It's good for me.
Okay, we'll rock right
into it.
Was
it good for you?
Was it good for you? So anybody who's listening live, we're going to be...
I was just going to bring up the thing Tim sent me. I don't remember what part 2 was.
We're going to be talking more about actual practice and how to... This is the getting good.
I like number 2, Dick List, classy player.
Yeah.
How am I going to ask that question? Are you an asshole? Did you bring a good list?
Bring a dick list, but be a classy player. Is that what that?
Or should it be the other way around?
We'll find out.
Be a get a classy list. Be a dick player.
Okay, so I will kick right into episode 2 then. Here's a pause. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the special 3-part podcast, Road to the WTC. What we've done is we've gathered some like-minded folks who all are, hopeful to go to the WTC this year, who have gone to the WTC in the past and are hoping to be able to give you the information you need so that you can go to the WTC. Before we get started, I want to introduce everybody who's part of our panel. First off, George Schweizer, who is going to be manning the boards, making sure that your questions get answered and making sure that this whole podcast thing works.
Yeah, I'm going to try and actually record all this time.
Oh, good idea. And, of course, our 2 actual expert panelists. We'll start with Tim Banky. Tim, tell us a bit about yourself and why you qualify as a bit of a WTC expert.
Yeah, sure. I'm Tim, Tim the Enchanter on what remains of the forums, various outlets. I'm part of Arcane Assist, where we make battle reports, and last year I was a Canadian WTC captain. Years previous, I've been an adjudicator at the event, and I've been a member of the Canadian Selection Committee. I am not this year, but I am hopeful to be a member playing this year again as well. I am also a member of the WTC Committee for 2018. So I get to help make some of the decisions about how the event's going to be organized this year.
The second person we have on our panel is the one and only Bubba Dalton, King of the North, who has been going to this for a while. Yes.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Fantastic. Bubba, tell us a bit about yourself. You've had a long history with the WTC.
Can't take this man anywhere.
My name's Chris Dalton.
You said it. You said it live.
Are we going to go here? I know what's written on your passport.
Shut up. I'm the King of the North. I've been to WC 3 times now. Hopefully a 4th next year. Apparently I play Kador sometimes. Not very well.
Oh, me too.
Other than that, yeah.
So tonight's cast, we're going to focus on part 2. If you want to know about how to get into the WTC, particularly the Canadian team, listen to part 1, which is of course accessible. It'll be here in the notes below either the video or part of the SoundCloud feed. Tonight, where we're going to focus is what happens after you've been selected, and or what's happening during the selection process, and how do I get there. Not necessarily how to quote unquote get good, but there is going to be some advice on how to improve your gameplay to that level. We're going to get that advice from our panel of experts. So let's get right into it. What is meaningful practice, and why is that the focus of this cast? What does that whole thing mean to you? We'll start with Tim.
There's a lot of ingredients that go into meaningful practice, and I've actually talked about this on a Moose Machine episode before. If anybody's seen it, some of this is going to be repeated. But it's about meta-analysis. It's about knowing what you're likely to face and playing against lists that fit that criteria. When I was training my team last year, we'd go through weekly challenges where I'd say, like, okay, this week I want you guys to all read the stuff that Yarley's written on his blog. I'd like you to make sure you've got people in your local meta who can build those lists and play those lists, even if they're proxying, and play them against you. And I want everybody this week to focus on just beating Signar. And play your Signar matchups, play your good ones, play your bad ones, and give me feedback. And then we'd meet up again and we'd say, okay, what worked, what didn't? And then the next week I'd say, okay, this week it's about intensity of play and playing under time pressures. Everyone's going to play with 42-minute death clocks, and you're going to play on 7-minute time turns, and you're going to ship both of those clocks back each turn, and you're going to feel that pressure, and you're going to play against opponents who are playing on an hour clock, and you're going to lose on time sometimes, and you're going to try to dig deep and play really, really well under those conditions. And we, go through various different things like that. And it's not just, play a game against somebody, get a gotcha, win your game, feel good about yourself. Sometimes it's you're about to lose on this condition. Don't fight me harder. It's about giving your opponents everything you can so that they challenge you as much as is possible. Because it doesn't matter. I don't care if you lose every single game going up to the WTC if you win your games once we get there. And there's no ego at this point. You've already been selected for the team. I don't need you to prove anything anymore. I've already picked you for a good reason. Now just get good.
Bubba, what is meaningful practice to you? I mean, what is it that you should be doing on your road to getting to the WTC?
What Tim said in regards to playing games and pushing yourself and doing more than just playing a regular game, it's also about more than just playing games. There's more you need to do. Mentally prepare yourself for all the situations. Read War Room a lot. Look at all the different lists a lot. Try out a lot of different things. Build a lot of different lists. Open your mind to all the possibilities. Don't narrow your focus immediately. Do that towards the end. Have that laser focus on what you've decided to do. But at the beginning, just take it all in and accept critique from your teammates and from the people you trust within the faction you're playing or whatever, because it'll make you better. If you just think you can do it all on your own, you're wrong.
Yep.
So you're out there practicing. I have a very interesting note here, but you should be, one of the things I think that people who are practicing will tend to go for is the, shall we say, the powerful lists in their faction. They're going to want to bring a crushing list, as my notes say, a dick list.
I want to send a thank to Matt McWaters who wrote this. He wanted Banky to extrapolate on the concept of dick list, classy player. What does that mean, Tim? And what are we talking about here?
It's actually an expression I use a lot. In other gaming communities, there's sometimes a pressure to play like a list that's narrative or the list that's fluffy. And this is an evolution of the notion that in War Machine, you want to play the absolute best list that you can. Don't pull punches. Play the absolute best thing that you can put on the table. And then when you're playing it, be just a gentleman about it. It's a concept that my rugby coach in high school used to say, the notion that rugby is a hooligan's game played by gentlemen. The idea is that you want to be beyond reproach. You want to play your games in a sporting quality. You want to be really, really clear about your effects. You want to be illustrative about your behavior. You want to be unambiguous about your dice rolling. You want everything about the way that you play the game to be gentle and approachable and kind. And then you want your list to just fuck them, like really hard. And that's an approach to the philosophy of sportsmanship too. I mean, at some level here, you want to make friends and you want to like represent your country well, but we also want to do well. And that balance is about putting all of the intensity and the animosity of play into unlocking the most devastating combinations in this game, and putting a lot of the kindness and the respectability and the politeness of Canadians into your demeanor about your process of aggressively fucking them.
Also, sound dating advice. Just want to. Just kidding. Okay. So, sorry. What does local success mean in the greater meta? So I'm doing well locally. I'm playing a lot of local games in order to prepare. I'm playing. I'm trying to play against some top players, but I'm still going to a ton of local tournaments. Is that going to help you on the greater scale?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to. I actually was a prop in rugby. I was a tight end, but not important. Yeah, no. One of the things about doing really well locally is, for one thing, it means you've got some ability. On the other hand, it probably means you're being inadequately challenged. So, like, those are two things to reflect on. If you're a big fish in a small pond, you need to get to a bigger pond. You need to play games on Vassal if you have to. I know it's a last resort, but it is access to some of the greatest players who do not have the ability to play with folks all over the world. The Australians play a lot on Vassal. Charles has played a lot on Vassal. Like, you can play games there with really high caliber players. You also probably need to go to some conventions. It's a crucible for learning how to play this game better. It is an environment where you're going to play against people and against lists and against things that you haven't seen before. And it's going to teach you how to get good and how to be better and how to adapt and how to be in a situation that you find uncomfortable and against a list that you thought was bad and that you wrote off on paper and that everyone in your local community agreed with you was bad. And now someone's playing it and they're doing really well with it and you don't understand why. And now you're forced to examine some of your own conclusions. So if you're doing really, really well locally, step one, congratulations, that's excellent. Step two, let's break you of those feelings of personal superiority.
Bubba, any advice on that count?
No, it's good. Like going to a con, you're gonna get to play a shit ton of games. So if you so choose, and you're gonna play in a bit of a hostile environment, which is just another added thing to getting good.
Excellent. So I've played all these local games, and I've played in a couple of cons. How do I know I'm ready for the WTC?
You don't.
And frankly, you're not. You're never ready. It's gonna blow you away.
The first time you go, it's a shock, no matter what. As much as the people that have gone before on the WTC will coach you through it and help you and guide you. There's always that little bit of shock. And you don't know if you're ready if you've been before. You always doubt yourself. Have I practiced enough? Did I pick the right list? Am I playing the right things? Blah, 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 blah. It's endless. You just never know. But, you get there and you play a game. Once you play a game, like you get there and you're playing a game, you're like, okay, it's all good. But up until that point, you just don't know.
Tim, any other extrapolation on that? How did you know you were ready?
I worked really hard and I set it as a goal. And I felt like I had gotten to the place where I was ready to be an acceptable applicant. And I applied a couple of times before I went. I certainly wasn't picked automatically or before I had what I felt was real merit and accomplishment. But the year that I took it really seriously and practiced, I went to, almost every convention for a whole year, playing the best I possibly could before putting in what I thought was a really rock solid application. And then I didn't stop. I did it again. I made the cut for a team and I said, I still need to practice and I still need to grow and I need to get ready for it. And I went to a bunch of other shows and I had a very, very good year this year. I think probably my best. And definitely my best. But, when I put in my application this year, I'm doing the same thing. I'm expecting that, my efforts and my accomplishments will speak for myself. And I feel like I've put the time and the energy in. So it's really just, make goals for yourself, accomplish those goals, and have this be, a part of that road.
I think we've touched.
Never get complacent. Get complacent. Always stay hungry, and always have passion. And if you lose any of those things, then stop.
So I think we've covered. You've talked a bit. This is a good segue into what a con is, what we consider a convention. Because there's a lot of conventions out there. There's a lot of. George, you and I have been to local Ottawa quote unquote conventions that end up having a 25-man steamroller. So you can't. I guess the question really is, what do you guys consider a convention in the greater scheme? Is there sort of a number of people you're looking for or a level of play that you're looking for that it becomes a true War Machine convention that qualifies for what you guys are talking about?
I'm looking for multi-day format, multiple events overall, and preferably each day, so that if I lose, I go 0-2 in an event really early in the day, I can do something else, whether it's just a scramble or something weird. That's fine. I want Iron Arena so that I can play a lot of games. If it's a qualifier for something bonus, and in general, most cons are to some degree. But it's really the multi-day format. The number of players isn't the be-all, end-all. It can be 30 players, and that's fine. It can be 130 players. Great. You can still play the same amount of games. and that's what it's all about.
Tim, any word on that?
I mean, from the experience of anybody who's thinking like, I want to grow and challenge myself more, your like convention, your like next step is really just something that takes you outside of your comfort zone. I mean, for me, that's like Lock and Load in Seattle, where you fly there and you like go to an event with a totally different meta and you really push yourself. But it could be that 25-person event in Ottawa if you only ever play in your own local meta in Kingston, for example. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go with some friends. I'm going to drive to Ottawa. I'm going to be outside of my standard level of comfort. That's the convention experience that you're looking for. For folks living in Southern Ontario, anything like TempleCon is drivable. We went to MuseonCon in Des Moines. That's drivable. War Machine Weekend, we drive to the Southern Ontario Open. These are all things that I would very much consider conventions and the kind of experience you'd be looking for. And the same kind of thing exists in the western portion of Canada. Like the folks who live in Alberta and BC, definitely Lock and Load is the big one, right? Like that's the thing where it really matters. Lock and Load is a great show. Right below that is Attack X. Attack X is excellent. GratzCon is also it's a crucible of really, really strong players who are playing an environment that can challenge people and push them to be better than themselves. That's what we're looking for out of these things.
So I guess the question is why is attending a con important for the WTC? I think we've touched on it in many, many ways, but why is that sort of the benchmark? And to sort of reflect on what we talked about in our last cast, is that something that even from the selection process on, the committee is looking for?
It's going to open your eyes to new things, and it's going to open your eyes to what you are as a player. You have these expectations. We're talking a lot about, the big fish in a small pond and playing in your local meta. And these are the people we're trying to find and we're trying to grow if they have the passion. I just want to touch quickly because people keep saying or have the perception that it's an old boys club. And I understand that completely. But what the players on WTC want more than anything is more players. We want it to grow. We want there to be 50 applicants, 100 applicants that are all just incredible players, because it's going to push everyone to be better. And going to a con will let you see how good you are in theory, to a degree. It's not the be all end all, but it's a big step, and it's the first step in really, really growing as a player. Because you're going to experience a whole slew of new things, and it's going to be great. You're going to have an awesome time.
So go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say to the point that Bubba was making about our efforts. We're actively mentoring new players and trying to foster people and trying to grow the community, and specifically trying to grow people at that really, really high level. Anybody who's reached out to me or who's commented on an Arcane Assist video or who's talked to me, I like to think of myself as pretty approachable, and that's because my ambition is to just spread whatever I know as much as I can and as far as I can, so that everybody can elevate their level of play. And that applies to people applying to WTC as well. If the selection committee said listen, Tim, you're going to be on team 3 this year. You made the cut because you worked really hard, but man, did we just ever have 15 applicants who were probably as good or better than you. I'm excited. That's great. That's the best thing for Canadian War Machine imaginable. That's absolutely fantastic, and I'd be hyped about that. And I think we're all in the same boat. And what we don't want is anybody who's been before to get complacent or to get disillusioned or to feel anything less than a lot of passion for the game, and yet still be guaranteed a spot. I don't think we have that environment. I think Scott's going to work really hard to make sure that that's not a thing that we're doing. But it's important to stay excited about it, and it's important to grow. And conventions are that crucible, that growing environment. If you're a Canadian player and you came to War Machine Weekend this year and you did really, really well, I was looking at your games and watching them and thinking how can I help this person be a part of a continued success story for Canada?
I think we can all speak to the we are lovers of cons. I think all 4 of us here are we go to them not just because we want to play War Machine. We go to them because we love the experience. We love the hanging out with really. I mean, all four of us, and including Maelstrom and everybody else out there who is part of this whole thing that we've been cherishing for the last few years. That going to cons is also just an amazing place to go to be accepted and be around friends. So even if you don't make the WTC team this year, or if it's not in your near future, I can't highly recommend the social experience enough.
Absolutely.
It is part of what makes this game wonderful. George,
I know people that go to cons and they play a game, maybe, or 2 games.
Shut up, man. I was hungover. Okay.
But
you got a game in, Will.
I got one in last year.
But they have an amazing time, and they keep going back.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll throw this out to Bubba to start with, and then Tim. If you're going to go to cons, I want you to give me your top 1 con to go to. If you only get to go to 1, your top 3 and your top 5. So Bubba, let's start. Let's start with
a loaded question.
It is. You gotta. So all your children running around here, I need you to pick your favorite.
Okay. Are we calling WTC a con?
No, because we're prepping for the WTC.
Okay. War Machine Weekend, number 1. It's my favorite con. I have never been to Lock and Load, but War Machine Weekend is my favorite con. It is centrally located in the States, which brings in everyone from every corner, including Canada, and it's the con where everyone is there. Top 3, so War Machine Weekend's number 1. The Sioux is number 2. It's local to me. It's the first big con I ever attended. It's where all my great friends from Ontario are. Quebec guys come, some Americans come up. It's nice and close to home, and it's just that kind of homey feel, and so I love the Sioux. Number 3, it's hard. I haven't been. I'm gonna say Lock and Load, even though I've never been. I just hear just stupid amounts of good things, so I'm gonna say Lock and Load. 4 and 5. Sometimes smaller cons are great because they're not quite as overwhelming to the senses and all that. I went to Ottawa for the first time this year, and I had a really, really good time. And I'm not just trying to talk this up because you guys ran it and all that shit. But I did have a really good time because I went to a con where I had basically met almost no one in person. I met you two guys, Maelstrom, like Bilac, but there was lots of people that I had no idea who the fuck they were. And then number 5, I don't know.
That's okay. We can let you off the hook for number 5. Tim.
TGX?
Nobody goes to TGX.
Okay. My number 1 is probably Lock and Load. I'm a West Coast boy. I grew up on the West Coast, and it feels always like coming home to go to Seattle because I'm from Vancouver. And there's so many rituals around Lock and Load. There's like all the Canadians going out to dinner together at the Crab Pot. There's, all the staff are there. I'm friends with a bunch of the staff members, and it's fun to hang out with them. So that's always cool. And then we go to specialties for breakfast, and there's a whole bunch of things about Lock and Load, even just outside the convention experience, that are really great. Number 2 for me is Southern Ontario Open. I helped build it, and it's the first convention I ever won. I've got a lot of history there, and it's a great Canadian show. Number 3 is War Machine Weekend. War Machine Weekend is an absolute blast, and it's a really, really cool show. The Invitational is it's unlike anything else, really, in War Machine, which is really cool.
They also set it up so you can watch the Invitational, which is great.
Which is so cool. And I've judged the Invitational a lot of times, so I've got kind of like a really cool relationship. It's the pro tour of War Machine of sorts, which is neat. If I'm going 4s and 5s, number 4 on my list is actually Attack X. Attack X is in Kamloops, and it's a super, super well-run show by Nathan. It's got a ton of different stuff at it, but the War Machine presence for it's really great. It's another West Coast event, so again, a big part of my heart is in BC and Alberta, and that's where I grew up. And I miss those things sometimes, and it's really cool to hang out with a community of people there who are just so passionate about War Machine, the people who I don't get to see every day. And then number 5 on my list is Captain Con. Captain Con is actually one of the first shows that like Bubba and Chris and I went to together. We had a really, really great time there. They're the home of the New England team tournament. So they're kind of one of the early progenitors of having lots of team tournament style events. And they're a seeded Masters, which is in contrast to like an open Masters like the Sioux is. There's a bunch of different events that qualify you for it, which is there's always this fun scramble experience getting into the Masters, which I
totally forgot about Captain Con.
That's your number 5, right, Bubba? Coming back.
Yep.
There we go. Perfect. So we're going to digress a little bit from the very focused WTC training talk, although this will apply because this is information on what you should do when you're going to cons for those people who are breaking out of their local meta, going to cons for the first time, either to practice for the team or to get ready for application. Let's talk a bit about travel prep. You guys have gone on some longer treks to go to some cooler cons in different places, different countries. We'll start with Bubba. What kind of travel prep do you put into going to foreign or faraway cons?
I triple, quadruple check everything that I have because you don't want to forget anything. And then I message Chris Orr, and he tells me what I've forgotten.
We'll put Chris Orr's
email.
Yeah, we'll put his email address right in the bottom of the
Yeah,
cast,
I'm sure
so
he'll love
everybody
that.
can just message
I'll just
him.
have it flashing on the screen.
Perfect.
So it's really important to make sure you pack everything. It sounds stupid, but you don't want to turn around and grab your passport because that sucks.
Yeah.
You don't want to forget a model because that's terrible. You want to make sure you have enough clothes, blah, blah, blah. You want to bring Advil, that kind of stuff, because eventually it'll happen. And you want to pack water for your trip because you don't want to buy €4 bottles of water like Or did.
Oh my god. So good.
And then
buy beer in Europe, not water. It's cheap.
Yeah, I know. And then another really important thing is when you're traveling to faraway places, unless you absolutely have to, don't travel alone. Find great people to travel with, whether it's friends or family or whatever, because they're gonna really make your trip great. So like, I always travel to cons with Tim and Orr and Beauchamp and all those people, because they're my great friends and they make the trip even better than it would be if I were to travel by myself for some weird reason.
Yeah, we've given that advice before. The con car is
absolutely.
often, like for us, I mean, we've done 3 years in a row with just you and I and Jason in the car. And often the trip itself getting there is the most fun part of the trip. One of my favorite memories is coming back with Shane and Mike and those guys in the car back from the Sioux. And I'm like, the Sioux is fun, but so is this car ride.
Yep.
Tim, any advice for travel tips for those going to cons outside of their own area?
I print a whole bunch of copies of my lists ahead of time. I think that's really smart. You don't want to be writing a list out 16 ways to Sunday. It's stressful and it's annoying. And I put those in my bag. And then I unpack the lists that I'm playing onto the tray that I will be taking them onto and make sure that I physically correspond everything on the tray to the things on the list. And then I unpack straight from that tray into my battle phone bag. That way I know that I've got all the models that I need and that there's not going to be any issues there. I always pack really light. That's just like a Boy Scout thing. I was a Boy Scout for a lot of years.
It's
and
fucking
I
don't know if he does it.
Yeah, I pack every single crevice of the battle phone bag tightly with clothes. I roll all my clothes instead of folding them because they take up less space and they end up less wrinkled. Like, you pack everything really, really tightly. You pack really well and you organize everything. And that's the biggest thing. Like that's step one. And then
you know what else there is? Do research of where you're going.
Yep.
To have a bit of an experience outside the con. I know we're talking about War Machine and about all those aspects, but part of going to cons and traveling and all that is to do a little more than War Machine sometimes. What's a good place to go have dinner? We always go to this place in St. Louis called the Shafley Bottle Works. Great little brewery. It's a bit of a drive from the actual con, but it is fantastic. We've gone 3-4 years in a row now. We make that like our last night place. It's wonderful. So
and like those kind of little
something.
rituals,
what's the big landmark? See that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Like convention experience, like it's about more than just the event. It's about the things you do and the sort of memories that you create for it. Like
War Machine.
you're off on a whole experience.
War Machine itself is more than the event.
Yeah, and the community of War Machine is really it's what keeps us all emotionally engaged in it. Oh, yeah, maple whiskey. We often stop at the duty free to pick up soda but definitely pack the fucking soda. That is something you cannot miss. Let me tell you, people will let you know if you forget it.
And luckily, the hotel in Hamilton that we go to at the SOO has enough activities that you can stay in the hotel. And I'm not saying don't explore Hamilton. I'm just saying.
Well, no, he said do your research and
right,
know
do your
ahead
research
of time.
and travel in pairs.
I'm a little bit saying don't explore Hamilton, but the zoo is amazing.
It is.
And Jackson Square Mall is actually
There
very,
you go.
very
Exactly.
well laid out.
There's nothing.
There's a lot to do there.
You don't
it's
need
a good
to.
experience.
You don't.
So if we're stepping backward a little bit from physically packing our bags, what steps ahead of time should we be doing to get ready for these cons that we're going to try and
do well,
earn our
Get
our
good.
stripes for the WTC, because this is a cast about how to get to the WTC.
Sure.
So
Practice your lists. I talk to people all the time who are like, yeah, I made a call that I felt like Khador wasn't very good in the meta. So even though I played 7,000 games of Khador, I played 3 games to Scorn and figured they were a good call. And they act like they're some fucking genius. And I'm like, dude, I don't care if you're playing the worst read on the meta imaginable. The lists you've got so many games with that you're well practiced with, those are what you should be playing right now. And then like the worst part is to hear those same people at the end of the event be like, no, I went 2-2. I figure I'm more like a 3-1 or a 4-0 player, but obviously I didn't do very well because I'm not playing my real faction. And I'm like, well then what are you doing? Like, play your real faction if that's what you're about. Like, go to an event prepared to do your best, and don't handicap yourself. Don't find a way to have a preemptive excuse. Don't play a bad list for fun. If your motivations are to qualify for this level of play, put your best foot forward every time. Like, approach the game and go there with real tangible goals. Like, when I went to MuseonCon this year, I brought one list. And I brought one list and 2 different casters to play it with, because I said, my ambition at this tournament is to get my ass kicked playing the same list and telegraphing what I'm playing to every single opponent I play, to see their best answers to it, to know if this list can hold itself up to the standard of play at the WTC, where people will have well-teched answers. And that was the experience I got out of that event.
Bubba, how do you prep for the con? What do you do in advance?
So if we're talking about WTC, and this, I've said this to a lot of people recently, because there's been quite a bit of chatter about new people trying to step it up. So if you want to make WTC, this is not a singular event, a singular process. You need to be prepared for the long haul. You need to have passion for over a year and dedication for over a year, because you need to practice games, Tim said. You need to do a lot of reading and communicating with other people, and a lot of playing games and playing lists. And you need to not get discouraged over that time frame, because you're going to lose games, and you're going to lose a lot of games. It's the nature of War Machine.
Sure.
And you need to understand that a local event, a con, etc., winning is great. And of course, if you're going to, your goal is to make WC, you want to win events, you're not going to win them all. I don't win them all. Tim doesn't win them all. We all lose, and that's fine, because you're going to grow as a player. So set the goals, short term and long term. You want to go to a con. Okay, I'm going to play these games leading up to it, and then go to con, and this is what I want to accomplish at this con. This is what I want to accomplish in 3 months. This is what I want to accomplish in a year. But to anyone who wants to go to WTC, if you want to make WCC next year, you need to start now to apply for next December, because it's a year-long process to work your way up to applying, to have enough games, to have the experience, to have the knowledge, to have the results. And then it's another year of practicing with your team to go to WTC. So like, there is somebody who could start right now who's been playing War Machine for a week. If they want to make WTC and they have the passion and the desire, then in the next year, they can reach that level where they can apply next year, and then they can have another year to practice with their team, et cetera, and go to WTC. It's absolutely within the realm of possibility. So never count yourself out like that.
Sounds like
but set your goals and have them, and have that passion.
Sounds like you also kind of need permission from your wife, I think, or husband. It doesn't matter. Just go. It sounds like you need to have buy-in from your family as well, because this is going to be a dedicated process.
Well, and Tim talked about going to like 4 cons a year. Well, that's only one every 3 months. That's not that bad. If you can dedicate one long weekend, extended weekend every 3 months, go to your 4 cons, and then go to your local monthly steamroller, or maybe you travel to 2 a month. You go to one that's out of town. It's not that much time commitment for the traveling portion over the course of a year, if you really lay it out like that.
Yeah.
So your wife won't be too upset. Mine still is, because I go to WC this year and didn't take her this year. So,
George, next question.
So, how do I know what faction and lists I should be practicing? Like, how do I make that decision?
How do you make the finals? Because you play, 3 factions? It's easy for a guy who only plays 1 like me, but what about the guys that, they kind of switch factions every couple of months? How do you decide which ones are the best ones to go at?
Are you talking about when going to WTC or when trying to make WTC?
When trying to make WTC. We assume that once you have a lot of people around to help you out for the WTC, but before that.
It doesn't matter. Play whatever. Play whatever you like. Play whatever you want. But play it a lot.
I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Sorry, Bubba. We're just going to pause you for 1 second because I think we've just kind of beat up your bandwidth or something. Is there a way to just we'll hang up on Bubba and bring him back? We can edit this out for the final cast. Sorry, everybody who's listening to it live. We're really scrambled on Bubba's end. I'm just going to.
He could just call back.
Now that we got rid of that, just kidding.
Look, you're putting an edit point in the middle for me.
I'm sorry, but it's either that or we have like.
I kind of like Robot
audio
Bubba.
quality is a priority.
Yeah,
kind of like Robot Bubba.
Robot Bubba, answer a question.
Charge.
Push those jacks forward.
Yeah, push the jacks forward, and yeah.
Did he reconnect?
I don't know.
Is he just making fun of us now?
Probably.
Hello. Hello, Baba. Hello.
Try hanging up on him and calling him again.
Hello.
Sorry about this, everybody. This is what happens when we're trying to be quality.
Unlike our normal cast.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're going to lose him entirely.
Yep. Hello.
It's funny.
Remove them from the group and re-add them?
Maybe.
Let's end the call with this person.
There you go. Now try removing him from the group. Let's put the bottom. There you go. Hello, Bubba, can you hear us?
There we go.
All right. Promising.
There's a spinny thing. Come on, spinny thing.
Peak hours. Everybody's watching Netflix at his house. It's like, oh, that does not bode well. Okay, try that one. Add to group call.
Hello?
Bubba, can you hear us?
I guess not.
Oh, no, he's there. Bubba, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry about that. My computer, I don't know, messed up.
Aha. Well, we'll finish off this segment and then we'll be done for the evening. So sorry about the audio quality change, everybody. But okay, let's get back to what we were talking about. We were talking about how to pick.
Yeah. So
pick your faction.
So Bubba, when you're getting ready, when you're doing that run up to the to your application for the WTC, how do you choose what faction and what like lists you should be focusing on?
So I believe I said you don't. You diversify. You play lots of different things. So the very first year I applied to WTC, I didn't make the team because I only played one faction. I played that faction well, but you want to have options because what if you, for example, say you want to play WTC, you're a Kador player, great Kador player. You make the WTC, and you are put on the same team as me, and I say, well, I'm playing Kador, go fuck yourself. But you can only play Kador. Well, that's gonna be a problem because we both play the same thing. But if you're like, oh, well, I can easily also play Signar, or I can easily also play Trolls, you're going to be a lot more valuable as a WTC player because the meta changes all the time. You could be practicing something for 3-4 months, lock and load shows up, errata hits, new models come out, meta changes, blah, blah, blah. Playing a lot of different things is important.
I had an interesting experience this year when I was applying. The person I was interviewing with said, like, well, what factions are you playing right now? What are you playing? And I said, I'm playing a lot of Circle, and that's what I played recently. I won Champions at War Machine Weekend this year with Rhett, so I'm pretty comfortable with my Rhett. But I've got kind of a read that I think Crix is actually going to be good. And they kind of like laughed me out of the conversation, like, oh my God, Crix is in such a terrible place right now, Tim. That's like, you're totally crazy. You're definitely not taking Crix to WTC. It's good that you can play other factions. So, like, Bubba's right that things change. Because I think by the time WTC rolled around, Crix was in an okay place. But, like, that flexibility is a reason that I got to be on a team. Because if I'd said I'm a Crix player and that's it, I would have not made the cut with the position that faction was in at the time that applications were being finalized.
Well, it also helps you understand if you play a lot of factions, you're also going to have an intuitive knowledge of what the other factions do, what their models do across the table. You're going to be a better player overall if you're playing at a high level at a few factions. Am I correct on that, or am I?
No, that's absolutely true. There's such a thing as being too scattered where you never really focus up and do well with anything. And if you are a person right now who owns 12 factions and never plays the same thing at a tournament twice, that's a mistake if you're trying to ramp up to the WTC. Like, focus in on something. It could be Malikov. I don't care. It doesn't matter how good that thing is per se. We'll fine-tune what lists you're going to play when you make the cut. But in the meantime, focus up on something enough to win something, to do well, to prove yourself in a meaningful way. Like, I got to say, I have won Champions at War Machine Weekend. Tough field, lots of good players, Champions event. I played Helena and Virus 1. Like, here you go. And people are like, well, when we go to WTC, you're not going to play Helena and Virus 1, obviously. But I'm glad you can do well at an event. And that's important. On the flip side, if you play one faction and you've done pretty well with them, try to diversify that a little bit. If your resume already says one bunch of events with Kador, how about you go play something different for a while and just show that you're capable of that?
Like Trolls.
Yeah, like Trolls. Don't crutch on derp derp charge. Wait.
No, do.
No,
Wait, no. Different conversation. So I guess the next question is I need help. I want to become better. I really do need help. I want to become a better player. We've touched a bit upon it, how open the WTC players are, and especially the captains and everything. But who do I go to for help? Is there sort of an open phone line somewhere that I can call to become a better player?
Oh, I wish.
Just message us.
Yep.
We're more than happy to respond. Like, it happens all the time. People message us and we just chat with them. If you're interested in going to a con, ask us what cons we're going to. Come to that con, hang out with us. Matt McWaters did that. He goes, oh, you guys are going to War Machine Weekend? Like, can I come and like we'll hang out? I was like, absolutely. Cool.
And we did. We had a great time, and he actually had a really great run at War Machine Weekend.
Yeah. It's as simple as that. Just message us, talk to us. We're more than happy to help. We want, like we said, we want nothing more than to do that. So just shoot us a message. Hey, what do I need to do? What cons do I need to go to? If you want more specific and pointed help, with certain factions, then you can maybe message the person a little more renowned for that faction. Like if you want some Legion help, you can message or Corey Burns, that kind of thing. Menoth, you can message Josh. But in general, just message any of the WTC guys. We'll help you out. If you want to come to an event, cool. We go to almost all of them.
Sometimes when you get tagged into a conversation, it turns into a 3,000-word essay on Khador, but normally that's not what materializes.
And if anybody listening feels uncomfortable messaging the WTC members, don't hesitate to get a hold of us here at Moose Machine. And we can find the person that is going to be able to give you the best information.
Yeah, we don't have a problem because one of the things that we pride ourselves on here, and this is a lot due to these two guys and a lot of our other guests that we've had over the years, is we pride ourselves on being able to be an open forum for the community and be friends with a lot of the people in the community. We have no problem pimping out our friends to help you become better.
Absolutely.
You have another question, George?
We've talked if you've listened to episode 1, we've talked a little bit about the types of things that you should be putting into your application for the WTC. But before I'm doing that, how do I put together... What are the steps I should be doing to put together a meaningful list of skills? What are the things? So I'm good with one faction. What other things should I be doing so that when I put in my application, I'm going to have a better chance at the WTC?
Think about it a little bit like a job application or a resume. I think a lot of the things that are applicable to good resume writing or a good CV or a good cover letter apply really well to answering the WTC application questions. Again, with the application not posted yet to the site, it's a little bit difficult to give you sort of specific suggestions. But I know when I applied, I put a lot of detail in about kind of the insight that I have to the game, some of the perspective that I have as a player who is also a judge. If there's anything that you've got that kind of lenses you well as a mind about the game, I think that helps. It's also worth pointing out that like the people who are looking at these applications are sometimes captains, but often like major event organizers. Like they're people who are looking for the right attitude too. Like we're looking to send representatives. So you don't want to give anybody the impression that you're a dick. Like don't do that. Don't be that. But certainly don't put that on your application. And as somebody who has conducted interviews for hiring positions, you ask people like, have you ever been in a position where somebody, with authority has, created an interpersonal conflict for you? And you answer that question, be like, oh yeah, and I told them what for. Like, you don't get that job. Like, it's not how life works.
And I think that speaks to the fact that we are a small community. So if you are a vocal, for lack of a better word, dick online, you might want to avoid doing that for a year. But be a positive influence on the community. I think that
fucking do whatever I want,
except for Bubba. Be a positive. But I mean, that being aside, we put on these caricatures sometimes of being dicks. But I mean, you and I have definitely done it. But be a positive influence on the community. Am I right on that, Tim? It's you're going to do better if you're positive, right?
I think so. But that's sort of my reputation. I was once described as being nauseatingly positive.
Bubba, any advice for putting together the meaningful application? Getting known?
Well, it's not there is a part of getting known, and that goes back to communicating with the players too, and the council too, because there are great players that maybe we just don't know or know that well. And so, it doesn't hurt at all to talk to us. So that helps. But in terms of your application, don't lie. Oh my God, don't lie. Be honest.
Yes.
Like,
if you're like, oh, I haven't lost a game with fucking Signar in 3 years, like, come on, like.
Technically, it's because I haven't played a game with Signar in 3 years.
No, but no, like you can see through that bullshit so quickly. Like I had a guy who I was interviewing last year, and I won't name any names here, but I was like, how many games do you normally get in a week? And he gave me a number, and I was like, okay, that's fairly reasonable. Like, okay, so extrapolate that for me. Obviously, you take breaks, and like some weeks you have events, and some weeks you don't. Like, what do you get? How many games do you get in a typical year? Like, how many games did you get last year? Just guessing. He's like, I don't have to guess. I have it exactly recorded. I got 600. And I was like,
that's a lot of games.
Well, I got 300. And I play more games than anyone I know. You didn't get 600. like maybe. Like there's someone out there who got 600 games in a year. But like based on the conversation that we've had, I don't feel like you did. And I was like, oh, walk me through what a week looks like. And he's like, well, Steamroller once a month, and I go to game nights on Wednesdays. And I'm like, and because
all
that's
of
not
Wednesday?
600. like Wednesday and Thursday, Friday and Monday, because that's the number of days of the week you'd have to do this for. Like, otherwise it just doesn't work out. And anyway, like that kind of stuff, you need to be honest. You need to be clear with people. And like in my interview with John Ferris, I said, like, how many games do you get in a week? How many games do you expect to get leading up to WTC? And he was like, well, this is what my gaming schedule looks like in a week. These are the number of games I get. This is how many I think I'll be able to get before September. And I was like, John, you've got a great application. You're not going to get on the team with those numbers. Those are rookie numbers. What if we did this and
Pump
this?
those numbers up.
Yeah, but I said, like, what do we got to do to get you up to this number? And he was like, oh shit. Well, I can talk to my partner, and I can make some life changes, and I can probably get it to this number. And I was like, okay, that's worth talking about. And like, but that's the kind of coaching you expect. If somebody's not going to be honest with me, I can't fix that.
Yeah.
You play the Rocky theme song, you go to a freezer and beat up some meat. Sorry, George, you have another question.
So, and this sort of lends very nicely into that, where we're talking about how many games you get in a week. What can you do as a local player to help out other people to get to the place where they are good to push you to help you be a better player? Because one of the big problems often for people trying to break from this I win a local steamroller to I do well at tournaments, the problem is you're the biggest fish in that pond, right? And there's nowhere for you to go locally. So
I think you're saying what is it? What does the big fish do to help others?
Yeah, to help out the others get to that place.
You need to identify people who are wanting to step up their game as well. If people don't want to, don't force them. If they just want to come out and have a good time and do what they do, that you got to respect that and let them do that. Don't put them out of their comfort zone. But if there are people, find some like-minded people, because maybe there are. Maybe you just don't know. Talk to the community. See if there's anyone else interested in stepping up their game, so to say. And those people can come along with you on that journey, and you'll both be better for it. And find those regular practice partners to push each other.
Tim, you're kind of known as a coach in your area, and people go to you to improve their game, and specifically request. How do you help them get there?
I mean, you answer all the questions to the best of your ability, and you engage in dialogues, and that's part of it. Is you say, like, okay, let's test it, let's figure it out. And then, like, for me, I mean, in terms of personal improvement, whenever somebody comes to me with a question and they're like, well, what do you think about this list? I'm like, I like this, I don't like this has worked well for me, this hasn't worked well for me. And they're like, what about this thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, test it and then come back to me, like, talk to me about it, tell me how it did. So as a result, I've got a large community of people in my circles who are regularly coming to me saying, like, I tried that swap with a Kodiak and this worked or this didn't work, and like, I liked this and I felt like the infantry clearing was good, but I felt like maybe it was a bit overcosted. Like, what if we dropped that down to a Juggernaut and we freed up points here? And like, those conversations are happening for me all the time. So not only are they effortless and second nature and really just a part of my daily routine, I get up in the morning and there's 15 new Facebook messages with people teching lists, and I'm engaged in that process of teching lists. but they're something that I want to invite people to be doing themselves, and building a broader community that is always talking about those things and working on those things. And if people are playing a game of War Machine locally, like, I'll stop and I'll talk to them and I'll ask some questions about some of the list choices they made, or they'll offer to me some of those suggestions about those changes. And when your whole community is doing that, when everyone is focused on it, it elevates the level of play for everybody. It's not like, I've been in some metas where everyone's trying to win the next steamroller and nobody's talking about it, no one's communicating, and they're like, well, I have to beat so-and-so, so I'm going to tech a list for him. And that's just not the way our local area plays. It's like everybody knows the matchups walking into them, and they've talked about them and they've thought about them and they've teched them. And the second the game is done, and sometimes, like, almost embarrassingly so, sometimes during the games, our local players will be like, I feel like this is better. Shouldn't you be doing this? Or they'll be like offering suggestions about how to play the nuances of the matchup. And it's just, that's the attitude that we have. And I don't know if it's inappropriately generous or too giving with information, but I've always behaved, and I've talked to some of the Swedish players the same way. It's just, the idea is, it's the whole game is elevated if everybody is just sharing information and communicating with each other and trying to get everyone to grow. You're better because of it. And then it comes down to, who did well that day and who's on their game and who's putting the time and the energy in.
I think we're going to wrap it up with that, because I think that's a great way to end for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, that was part 2 of Road to the WTC. We will be doing part 3 coming up. We're not going to record that tonight, so those people that are listening to it live, sorry about that. George, do we have any questions from the audience?
We did have several, but they were answered along the way.
Oh, excellent. So we're going to leave it at that for this evening. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Bubba. I couldn't ask for more knowledge. My brain is now full. I must go get a nap. And I want to thank, of course, we want to thank Matt McWaters for putting together the questions along with Tim, and just George. Thank you for running the boards.
Always happy to be here.
We'll have this podcast done and ready to go in a few weeks, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Empty space for a second.
Matt McWaters is a fucking scrub.
And there we go. Right on, guys. Well, I think that's about as much as our brains can handle is 2 hours of straight talking. I know you guys can.
Oh, absolutely.
That, and I think we've already killed Bubba's computer.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, no, Skype just shut off. I don't know.
Welcome to the wonders of Skype.
All right, gents, I appreciate it, but I gotta take off. I've got evening plans to get to, so thank you very much for all your help and all of your energies.
Go play another dozen
I've been
games.
Up 1 a.m., so I'm just gonna go to sleep.
Yeah. All right, and I'll organize another. We'll do another recording in a week or so, and we'll get the last one.
Perfect.
Done. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Sounds good.
Woot woot.
Night,
We're out.
guys.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.
All right. Let's see you guys later.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.